All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're talking about a really powerful framework for achieving financial freedom, and this one is specifically built for the American economy. We're going to walk through a 6-month roadmap that might just completely change how you think about prosperity. So let's do this.
So, does this sound familiar? You're putting in the hours, you're doing everything you're supposed to do, but it just feels like you're running on a treadmill, right? You're working harder than ever, but that feeling of actually getting ahead, of making real financial progress, it just seems to be just out of reach. And you know what? It's a super frustrating spot to be in, and a lot of us are there.
Okay, but what if the problem isn't that daily coffee or the Netflix subscription? What if all that endless budgeting and penny pinching is actually distracting you from the real issue? This is the big question we're digging into today. What if the problem isn't your spending, but your fundamental position in the economy?
And that brings us to what's called the positioning framework. Look, this is not just another tip or trick. It's a totally different way of thinking about your finances. It's about switching from playing defense to playing offense.
Just look at the difference here. The old advice on the left, budgeting, cutting costs, saving more, it's all reactive. It's about protecting the money you already have. But this new framework on the right, it's completely proactive. We're talking about aligning yourself with where the economy is growing, leveraging what you already have, and strategically positioning yourself to catch that wave of future growth.
And this quote just nails it. It gets right to the heart of the matter. The key isn't just earning more, but positioning yourself correctly within the larger U.S. economy. Think about it, right? A doctor in a small town where the main industry is leaving and a software engineer in a booming tech hub, they might work just as hard, but their financial futures are going to look totally different. And why? It all comes down to their position.
So what are we actually talking about with financial positioning? Well, here's the official definition, but let's break it down. It's really about strategically lining up your unique skills, what you're great at, and your assets, your capital, with the parts of the economy that are just exploding with growth. It's about surfing the economic wave instead of trying to swim against the current.
Okay, so that's the big idea, the theory. But how do you actually do it? This is where it gets really good. Let's get into the actionable plan, a 6-month roadmap to turn this whole concept into your reality.
So this whole journey is broken down into 3 2-month phases. First up, for months 1 and 2, it's audit and align. This is where you do your homework, your deep dive assessment and planning. Then, for months 3 and 4, we move to execute and accelerate. This is where the action happens. And finally, in months 5 and 6, you solidify and secure. You're basically making sure your new position is strong and built to last.
But let's really focus in on that first phase, because honestly, the foundation is everything. These first 2 months are not about making huge, risky moves. Nope. They're all about getting crystal clear on where you are and where you're going. Think of it like drawing a really detailed map before you even start the car for a long road trip. So what are you actually doing in those first couple of months? Well, it breaks down into 4 key actions. First, you've got to take a serious inventory of your skills and assets. What are you truly great at? What do you have to work with? Second, you analyze the high-growth sectors in the U.S. economy. Where's the money flowing? Where's the innovation? Think AI, renewable energy, specialized healthcare, that kind of stuff. Third, you create your personal alignment plan. This is where you connect the dots between your skills and those booming sectors. And finally, number 4, you map your capital flow. You figure out exactly how to aim your money to support and speed up this new plan.
But hold on, before we go any further, we have to get really clear on the destination. What does financial freedom even mean? Because it's probably not what you think.
Yeah, we've all seen this myth, right? It's the yacht, the private jet, sitting on a beach and never working again. This whole vision, it's not just unrealistic for most of us, it's actually unhelpful. It makes financial freedom feel like this impossible all-or-nothing lottery ticket.
Okay, now let's talk about the reality, which is honestly so much more powerful. Real financial freedom isn't about not working. It's about not being forced to work a job you can't stand. It's about having real control over your time. It's having the ability to weather any economic storm, like a layoff or a recession. Ultimately, it's about having agency and real options in your life.
So when you boil it all down, weathering a storm, having options, controlling your own time, what does that all add up to? It really comes down to one single powerful word: agency. The freedom to make meaningful choices about your life, your work, your future, without being a slave to your next paycheck. That is the real goal.
All right, so we've covered the framework, we've walked through the roadmap, and we've defined the real goal. Now the big question turns to you. how do you take all this theory and actually turn it into action?
And that really leaves us with this one last critical question. And I want you to really think about this for a second. Where are you positioned in the U.S. economy right now? Are you fighting against the current, or are you riding a wave? And maybe more importantly, if you started this plan today, where could you be in just 6 months? Seriously, the answer to that question could change everything.